CNN partner hotels, connected to your world.
I'm Patrick Upman in Havana. This is CNN.
All right, big changes in ICE operations in Minneapolis after the fatal shooting of Alex Pretty. One World starts right now. Top border officials, Greg Bovino, is expected to leave Minneapolis as the White House border czar Tom Homan takes over operations there. We are live for you at the White House with the very latest. Plus, new reporting exclusive to CNN, U.S. plans for Venezuela, including a big role for the CIA. And the world's biggest social media companies face trial over claims they pose a risk to young people's mental health. All right, coming to you live from New York, I'm Zain. You are watching One World. The White House is showing signs of what could be a rare de-escalation as its signature policy comes under fire. It comes amid nationwide groundswell of rage, grief, and calls for accountability after the second shooting death of a U.S. citizen in Minneapolis by federal immigration agents. On Monday, President Trump announced he is sending his border czar to Minnesota. Tom Homan is expected to replace the man currently running the immigration enforcement operation, Gregory Bovino, and he may not be the only one. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, who responded to Alex Pretty's killing by calling his actions terrorism, met with Trump for 2 hours on Monday. That same day, Trump said he had great conversations with the Minnesota leaders, while the White House signaled a notable shift in tone.
Nobody in the White House, including President Trump, wants to see people getting hurt or killed in America's streets. This has obviously been a very fluid and fast-moving situation throughout the weekend. As for President Trump, whom I speak for, he has said that he wants to let the investigation continue and let the facts lead in this case.
CNN's Betsy Klein joins us live now from the White House. So in terms of Tom Homan's arrival in Minneapolis, Gregory Bovino essentially being demoted and being removed from his position there, just walk us through what changes now on the ground, Betsy.
Right. Well, as you heard from Caroline Levitt, they're seeking to put a little bit of distance between President Trump and comments from others in his administration. We are just seeing in real time this shift in both tone and strategy from the White House. And I just want to recap the messaging that we were hearing over the weekend in the immediate aftermath of the federal law enforcement killing of Alex Pretty. We heard from senior officials like Stephen Miller, the president's deputy chief of staff, along with Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem and Border Patrol Commander Gregory Bovino, referring to Pretty as, quote, a domestic terrorist. They said that in their view, they believed he wanted to massacre federal law enforcement. The White House receiving significant pushback to that from longtime traditional allies. That includes lawmakers, conservative media personalities, as well as the NRA. Internally, we have learned that some administration officials were left deeply frustrated this weekend by both Bovino and Kristi Noem's handling of this situation. President Trump, for his part, spent significant time watching the coverage unfold over the weekend, and he was unhappy with how his administration came across. And we saw this leadership shakeup. Bovino out. Homan is in. He is someone with significant experience in immigration enforcement. He's expected to be more of a partner to state and local officials on the ground. And we know that President Trump spoke with Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey and Minnesota Governor Tim Walz on Monday. By all accounts, those were productive, constructive conversations. According to Walz, he said that he pushed the president for an independent investigation into this incident, as well as for a reduction in the number of federal law enforcement agents on the ground. And Frey, for his part, said that Trump cannot continue as it currently stands. But we also heard from President Trump indicating that there could be an off-ramp earlier this morning. Listen.
I think so. Yeah, I mean, I think so. What we need is their criminals. You know, they have criminals, and all I said, just give us your criminals. And if you give us the criminals, it all goes away. They're there to pick up murders.
Now, we also have learned that President Trump met in the Oval Office with Kristi Noem and her top deputy, Corey Lewandowski, for nearly 2 hours yesterday evening. That meeting came at Noem's request. And according to our reporting from our colleagues colleague Elena Treen. Trump did not threaten their jobs, but they did have a frank conversation on the path forward in Minnesota.
Betsy Klein, live for us there. Thank you so much. All right, Iran may be trying to negotiate a deal with Washington amid a growing U.S. military buildup in the Middle East, according to President Trump. In an interview with Axios on Monday, the president says the situation is in flux, but thinks Tehran genuinely wants to cut a deal after he, quote, sent a big armada, in his words, to the region. The U.S. carrier strike group entered the Indian Ocean on Monday amid soaring tensions between Washington and Tehran. Now to CNN exclusive, more than 3 weeks after the U.S. ousted Nicolas Maduro, multiple sources tell CNN the CIA is quietly working to carve out a permanent U.S. presence in Venezuela. This is Venezuela's acting president delivers a tough message to Washington. In a speech to oil workers, Delcy Rodriguez says she has had enough of U.S. orders and interference in the country's politics. CNN's senior national security reporter Zach Cohen joins us live now from Washington, D.C. Just in terms of this idea that the CIA is working to establish some kind of a permanent presence in Venezuela, just walk us through what that signals about the U.S.'s long-term strategy and long-term goals in the country.
Yeah, it's really notable that it's the CIA and not the State Department who is leading this, at least initial push to re-enter Venezuela after that operation to capture former President Nicolas Maduro. And despite that tough talk we're hearing from now acting President Delcy Rodriguez, I'm told it's going to have almost certainly no impact on the CIA's plans to establish this foothold inside Venezuela itself, as the CIA is really preparing to take on a major role in trying to shape the country's future going forward. We know that from sources that there have been ongoing planning discussions between the State Department and CIA, focused on both the short-term and long-term plans as part of a U.S. presence, as far as U.S. presence goes, inside the country. We know President Donald Trump wants to reopen the U.S. Embassy in Caracas, but due to the unstable security environment and the ongoing political transition, I'm told that U.S. officials will likely work out of a CIA annex in the near term. That at least offers an opportunity for U.S. officials to begin to lay the groundwork for the long-term diplomatic engagement with Venezuelan officials, military officials, and members of the opposition groups that exist there. It's also a place where CIA start identifying potential threats, third parties that are viewed as potential threats to U.S. interests as the Trump administration seeks to wield its influence over the country's new leadership. And that's something that we heard from CIA Director John Ratcliffe, and that was his message to Delcy Rodriguez when he visited Venezuela just a few weeks ago. He was actually the first top Trump official to travel to Venezuela after that operation to capture Nicolas Maduro. And he made very clear to the acting president that the U.S. will not tolerate Venezuela being a safe haven for U.S. adversaries like Iran, Russia, China. And I'm told that the CIA will take the lead going forward in briefing Venezuelan officials about those ongoing concerns about those countries operating in the country. And look, this is going to be a tricky line to walk for the CIA. Nicolas Maduro spent much of his time in power blaming the CIA for effectively anything that went wrong during his time in office, and essentially using that as a boogeyman of sorts to accuse the U.S. of trying to topple his regime. And ironically, the CIA did play a significant role in the operation that ultimately did result in the capture of Maduro, now poised to take on an even greater role in trying to steer the country toward what the Trump administration wants to see from them. And at the same time, I'm told that this is all happening as the CIA and State Department have not received really explicit directives from the Trump White House about what its broader objectives in Venezuela are. So really trying to do what they can in the short term, expecting that directive and that explicit guidance to come down later and be folded in.
All right, Zach Cohen, live for us there. Thank you so much. Right, let's bring in CNN military analyst and retired Air Force Colonel Cedric Layton. So just in terms of what Zach started off saying there, this idea that it's the CIA leading the charge in this, in terms of an expanding presence in Venezuela over the long term, not necessarily as much the State Department. What are you gleaning from that?
Well, hi, Zain. It's very interesting to hear Zach say this because this is kind of going back to the way in which the U.S. handled a lot of its relations in Latin America in decades past. The CIA had a very influential role in a lot of different Latin American countries, and one of the closest ones that actually borders Venezuela, Colombia. Had a large CIA presence, has had a large CIA presence really since the 90s and even before that, in order to prosecute the counter-drug efforts. So the CIA involved other intelligence agencies from the U.S. Is kind of normal for these kinds of operations. What's different here, though, is that it's going to be in Venezuela because Venezuela, of course, has been denied territory for the CIA for all practical purposes, except for, of course, very covert operations. So that's, we're kind of seeing a change in perhaps the localities that the CIA is using, in specific countries that it's using, but it's also indicative of the kind of movements that the U.S. is conducting under President Trump, because we're looking at more covert operations and more CIA-aligned operations at this point.
I mean, what sort of long-term planning, reliable long-term planning can there really be for Venezuela, just in terms of the CIA presence there and this administration strategy in the country overall, especially given that this administration only has technically about 3 years left on its term? I mean, it's highly possible that another administration post the next elections could come in and have a completely different approach. And what does that mean for the future of the country?
Yes, certainly that's very true. What it could mean for the future of Venezuela is that they would have perhaps depending on what kind of government Venezuela ends up establishing, could have a more direct link in a future administration through the State Department to more normal things like development aid, reconstitution of their oil industry, things like that. But with the CIA in place in Venezuela, what could happen in that intervening 3 years is basically a realization of the Trump administration's national security strategy. At least for Venezuela, what that looks like is greater emphasis on the Western Hemisphere, and very specifically, as far as Venezuela is concerned, getting rid of the influence of countries like Iran, countries like Cuba, countries like Russia, which have had a primary influence in Venezuela up until this point.
And what would you expect in terms of the eventual sort of setup, establishment of the possibility of elections in the country?
Yeah, so that gets very interesting. So if things work the way they should, the CIA efforts would be focused on basically the security issues surrounding that. So if things work correctly, and the U.S. policy allows for elections, free and fair elections, then they could serve as, perhaps a stabilizing influence, but should not get involved in the direct implications of, picking a certain candidate, doing things like that. The CIA in the past, of course, has been implicated in events going as far back as the 1950s, such as the situation in Guatemala in the 1950s, and in other countries in South and other parts of Latin America, where CIA was involved, or allegedly involved in certain election influence operations. That is the kind of thing that we could see happen in this particular case. But the real job should be a security job. It should be related to providing for the security of the country, for the security of the American presence in that country going forward, and really the security for economic development of that country. But that is something that really is not the function of the CIA generally in terms of the security aspect. That should normally be the function of indigenous forces, and that is something that we'll have to see going forward what the Trump administration actually does.
I just want to pivot to Iran, because Donald Trump, in an interview with Axios on Monday, essentially told the publication that the situation with Iran is in flux, and that he believes that because he sent a big armada, in his words, to the region, that Iran genuinely wants to cut a deal. Obviously, we've seen the US president, make several threats against Iran in retaliation to its crackdown on protesters. Thousands of people in the country have been killed. Just walk us through what a possible deal with Iran could look like. What exactly would the US be wanting from Tehran?
Well, one of the supreme ironies would be if that deal involved nuclear weapons and the nuclear program in Iran. The Iranians, of course, have had a long-term movement and an operation designed to produce, the potential for at least the fissile material that is needed for the construction of nuclear weapons. So if they could achieve another type of Iran nuclear agreement, that would actually be quite useful, quite beneficial, not only for the U.S., but for the region and, generally speaking, the rest of the world as well. That would be the ultimate goal. More tactically and more likely would be some kind of an agreement that would allow for the regime to back off of its anti-protester stance and move toward democratization in Iran. Now, that is a bit utopian, and I don't think the administration is necessarily going to go that far, but some of their rhetoric has indicated that they just might. And if that's the case, that could potentially change some of the calculus on the ground for not only the protesters in Iran, but also, of course, for the regime itself. But the regime is really bent on survival, and I think that President Trump's statements that they're looking for a deal may not bear out in the final analysis, because what could happen here is that the Iranians may find themselves trying to provide for that regime survival, and they may very well get very hard-line positions in front of the U.S., and that could result either in prolonged negotiations or potentially a military strike against them. And that's, I think, kind of the fine line that the Iranians have to walk at this particular point.
All right, Cedric Layton, live for us. Thank you so much. All right, still the one world, an emotional moment in Tel Aviv as the last hostage in Gaza has finally been returned. You have details ahead about what this means, the next phase of the peace plan. Plus, rescue operations in Ukraine's Odessa way up ahead on deadly attack carried out overnight as negotiators search for a path to peace.
Today we live in an unpredictable environment, and news races around the world at breakneck speed.
It's a noble profession.
Why do you understand?
We want to keep it safe.
War correspondent. My show brings you the latest news and top news makers.
Can you tell me exactly about what's happening right now?
If we don't learn from some of the things in our past, then we're due to repeat them.
We also dive into the headlines.
What does it feel like to be slapped with a 50% tariff? That's not negotiation. What were you thinking when I was trying to get the truth out of you?
It's crucial we make sense of what's happening.
Why do you want your country's future to be decided by U.S. military intervention?
And fully understand what's at stake.
If you can double down on that. Amen. CNN.
Why, particularly in Gaza, why is leadership failed here?
Selfish, shorter interest.
The allegations, chilling stomach churning stuff.
Yes, it is.
What happens, Maria, what happens if you're arrested? We're taking one day at a time. Do you think that Colombia could be at risk here? What would it take, Mr. President, for Serbia to acknowledge Kosovo's independence? And it is here, and these St. Square, that his funeral will be held. This is what 18 months of war has done for the children of Gaza. Where do you find an empathy with some of these attacks for genocide in Rwanda? Mainly topography. Tell us about that moment. How does this story shape all of you on the future?
Did the re-election of Donald Trump play any role in your decision to resign?
Why do you need to study it? It sounds like you have the facts on your fingertips.
Great question. You continue to fight for your name to be cleared. Why? Do you have any concerns about Elon Musk?
There really is much more that unites us as Americans than that which divides us.
A moment with huge consequences for the nation and the world.
Watch The Lead, weeknights on CNN.
Israel is marking the end of a very dark chapter now that there are no more remaining Israeli hostages in Gaza. On Monday, the Israeli military announced that it had recovered the remains of Ron Giveli, the final deceased hostage in Gaza. Giveli was killed in the October 7th attacks, and his body was taken into Gaza moments ago in Tel Aviv Square. A clock that had been counting the days since the first hostages were taken captive stopped counting after more than 843 days. Giveli's return now paves the way for the second phase of the Gaza peace plan and the potential reopening of the Rafah crossing between Gaza and Egypt. In the last hour, Jeremy Diamond spoke with my colleague Becky Anderson right when the clock stopped. Take a listen.
You just think of how many times I've come to you live from right here in Hostage Square at the scene of demonstrations and of people raising their voices to try and secure the release of the hundreds of Israeli hostages who were taken captive on October 7th, 2023. Now it was 843 days later, just yesterday, that the final hostage finally came home. The remains of Ran Gvili, a 24-year-old Israeli police officer, were finally returned after extensive search efforts inside of the Gaza Strip. And now today, on that 844th day, some Israelis have gathered here to see as the clock behind me is finally going to be turned off. This has been the clock that has counted the days, the hours, the minutes, and even the seconds that these hostages have spent in captivity. And now, in about 1 minute's time, this clock will finally be turned off. A recognition of the fact that not only have all of the hostages, alive and dead, come out of Gaza who were taken on October 7th, 2023, but also that this is the first time since 2014 that there are no Israeli hostages inside the Gaza Strip. And this is obviously an enormous moment for the public here in Israel, which has known the names of almost every single hostage by heart, who have come to hold hostages and their thoughts and prayers over the course of the last 2+ years. And finally now, a moment of closure, not only for Ran Gvili's family, but also for so many Israelis here, as this country now closes the page on one of the darkest chapters in its history. And you can see the clock has now stopped at a fixed point. It hasn't gone off yet completely. But Becky, this clock has stopped ticking 844 days after October 7th.
And on the next hour of One World, we'll actually discuss the second phase of the Gaza peace plan. Joining us live now, or rather in an hour or so, will be Stephen Cook, a senior fellow for Middle Eastern Studies at the Council on Foreign Relations. Overnight, Russia launched what Ukraine calls a massive attack on the Odessa region. At least 2 people are reported to have been killed, with several injured. President Zelensky says that more than 50 strike drones were launched at the city, causing damage to housing, a church and a kindergarten in Ukraine's second largest city, Kharkiv. Officials say last night's attack knocked out much of the power. Plans are still in place for peace talks to resume at the weekend. But while the US and Ukraine say that progress was achieved in last week's meetings, the decisive issue of territory continues to be a key sticking point. Let's discuss all of this live now with Melissa Bell from Paris. So these continued attacks, including the attacks on energy infrastructure, certainly hitting Ukrainians hard. Walk us through what it actually means and how much all of this affects diplomatic efforts to end the war, Melissa.
And hitting them hard, Zain, of course, for the 4th winter in a row. We heard Mark Rutte yesterday, this NATO Secretary General, speak to the fact that he believed this was the harshest winter yet for Ukrainians because of the very cold spell that they're going through. As a result of those infrastructure hits on Kharkiv, you mentioned, Ukraine's second city, it is 80% of the city now that it is out without water, electricity, heating in these sub-freezing temperatures. So a very difficult winter for Ukrainians to get through. It is true in other major Ukrainian cities. There were also those strikes on Odessa that killed several civilians overnight. So it has been relentless from the point of view of ordinary Ukrainians trying to go about their lives and withstand the pressure of this now very long war. Even so, there has been some hope, of course, in the wake of what you mentioned, for the first time, those trilateral talks between Ukrainians, Russians and Americans over the course of the weekend in Abu Dhabi, it was the very first time the three sides met all together at once, and that was considered crucial and really beginning to make the kind of progress that has been elusive as a result of subsequent rounds of consecutive rounds of negotiations that have happened either between Europeans, the United States and Ukraine, or the United States on Russia on the other hand, and the fact that there's this sort of cyclical inability to make any real progress. Still, despite those trilateral talks and the hopes that were raised as a result of them, there remain these key issues. One of them, of course, the question of territory. We know that Moscow is still insisting, Zain, on the entirety of the Donbass, which does not yet control, and which it has described as the key to peace. It describes it as the Anchorage formula as a result of that summit, you'll remember, last summer in Alaska between the United States and Russia, at the time of which, of course, President Trump had said there was no deal till there was a deal. Still, Moscow insisting that that was the agreement that they now want to see respected for their agreement to a peace deal. On the other side, Ukraine has been very clear that it doesn't intend to make any territorial concessions, and certainly not in terms of territory not yet conquered. In terms of hope on their side, though, they do understand that those security guarantees between the United States, Kyiv and Europe are now ready to be signed and then ratified. That's the source of some hope. And there is one more outstanding question, Zain, and that is the question that Moscow has been very clear on. It has said once it was announced that NATO troops, boots on the ground, as we call them, both British and French troops, would be in Ukraine in a post-war settlement, Moscow has made it very clear that they will they will be legitimate targets in the eyes of Russian forces. That is another big sticking point that will need to be ironed out still. The hope is that the next round of talks that we believe will continue in the next few days, Zain, will bring some further clarity on those issues, and at least this feeling is that all the sides are now around the same table and hashing these things out, Zain.
All right, Minister Bell, live for us there. Thank you so much. Right, the mother of all deals. That is what the European Union is calling it as it wraps up a trade agreement with India. We'll have a live report for you after the break. Plus, China's most powerful general has become the latest military figure to be swept up in an anti-corruption purge. Why he's under investigation. Next.
The one-day work week will likely be here by 2040.
Once you have humanoid robots, there's really no limit to the economy. You can make anything.
Shift to artificial intelligence is going to be like a tsunami hitting the labor market.
This technology is going to impact the world profoundly.
It means every day will be your best day.
We've shared the stories of Africa's brightest stars, and now we're opening up the conversation, raw, real, and revealing. This is African Voices.
This week, UFC fighter Temba Gorimbo.
I don't talk to any of my family members anymore. None.
Not one of them?
No. I have cut all my family members off.
African Voices on CNN. In association with Glow.
We try to be global and we try to be smart. But I want to hear our authentic voices of people who are passionate or intelligent, and that's the consistency that we try to get at.
Fareed Zakaria GPS, Sundays on CNN.
Explore Africa with CNN, where 54 nations create the fabric of this rich continent. This is really complex. Discover business.
The biggest economic trends impacting the continent.
Nobody has ever done this in Africa.
Clearly, you're seeing something here.
Nature. and culture.
I love music. Like music, this is everything.
And the stories shaping Africa today.
Exported to markets around the world. The next 5 years, what excites you the most?
I think the digital economy is very, very exciting.
I had this compelling need to do something for my people, for my continent.
It's very, very important for us to tell our own story.
The energy is amazing. Feels so good to be here.
I'm Melissa Bell in Paris, and this is CNN.
All right, welcome back to One World. I'm Zain in New York. Here are some headlines we are following for you today. The face of US President Donald Trump's signature domestic policy agenda is changing. The president said he is sending his border czar, Tom Homan, to Minneapolis, while the man currently in charge of ICE operations there, Border Patrol official Gregory Bovino, is expected to leave. And we are learning a little bit more about Alex Pretty, the man who was shot and killed in Minneapolis on Saturday. Sources tell CNN that Pretty suffered a broken rib about a week before his death when a group of federal officers tackled him while he was protesting their attempt to detain someone. And CNN has learned that earlier this month, federal immigration officers had been asked to collect information about protesters in Minneapolis. In the US, more than 200 million people are under extreme cold alerts following the historic winter storm. An Arctic blast has now moved in, bringing dangerous freezing temperatures that are expected to linger for days. Officials say that more than 15 deaths have been attributed to the cold weather so far. President Trump says that he's raising tariffs on South Korean goods from 15 to 25%. In a Truth Social post, he said that South Korea was not living up to a trade deal reached in July. South Korea's presidential office says the trade minister will go to Washington for talks. After nearly 2 decades of stop-start negotiations, the European Union and India have signed a landmark trade deal. It means that India opening up its vast market to free trade with a 27-nation EU, already India's biggest trading partner, for both sides, boosting two-way trade as a way to reduce reliance on an increasingly unpredictable United States. Trade between India and the EU stood at $136.5 billion in the latest year. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen is hailing it as the mother of all deals.
Prime Minister, distinguished friend, we did it. We delivered the mother of all deals. We are creating a market of 2 billion people. And this is the tale of two giants, the world's second and fourth largest economies. Two giants who choose partnership in a true win-win fashion.
Our business and economics reporter Anna Kuban joins us live now. So she's hailing it as a win-win for the EU and India, two extremely very large trading partners, but it is widely being seen, as I mentioned, as a strategic hedge against the US, which of course has increasingly volatile trade policies. Just walk us through that and if we've seen any reaction from the Trump administration.
Yes, well, I think the timing is very interesting. You mentioned earlier that this deal between the EU and India has been negotiated on and off for the past 2 decades. The fact that it's come to this agreement today is not perhaps a coincidence, given all of the turmoil we've seen in the global trading landscape over the past year or so. India's been bearing the brunt of Trump's tariffs. We had a 50% tariff on Indian goods put on there last summer as punishment for India continuing to buy oil from Russia as Russia continues its war in Ukraine. And then the EU as well has been bearing the brunt of many tariff threats, the latest of which came just last week when Trump threatened to put tariffs on 5 countries, some within the European Union, which had, 8 countries, some within the European Union that had opposed his plans to take Greenland. Now, both the Greenland threat and also the tariff threat have dropped, but that just shows you how mercurial the US president is and how these massive economies need to really buttress themselves, need to have more independence from the United States, and so they are forming a stronger alliance together. Now, HSBC in a note today is sort of talking up this deal, saying that it provides opportunities beyond just liberalising trade in goods, also potentially creates opportunities to liberalise services trade and also increase investment opportunities between these two economies, which collectively represent almost almost, around a quarter of global GDP. So, Zain, this is a really important deal, and I don't think the signing of this deal today is a coincidence, given everything we've seen in the trade landscape over the past year.
Right, Anna Kuban, live for us there. Thank you so much. Right now, to a shake-up in the upper echelons of the Chinese military. The country's top general is under investigation. He appears to be the latest figure swept up in China's long-running anti-corruption drive. CNN's Will Ripley has more.
The stunning fall of China's most powerful general, Zhang Youxia, battle-tested survivor and longtime lieutenant to President Xi Jinping, seen by many as untouchable until this. A 30-second shock announcement from China's defense ministry. Zhang is suspected of leaking information to the U.S., allegedly revealing secrets of China's nuclear weapons program. The Wall Street Journal's Li Wei reports, citing a high-level Chinese military briefing.
Our reporting only shows that such a briefing happened, and the leaking state secrets was one of the allegations that was disclosed during the briefing. We haven't been able to verify any of those allegations.
Why would a Chinese general leak such sensitive information to the United States, if indeed that happened?
There are all kinds of speculations. There has been a track record of the party, drumming up charges against people they wanted to take down.
General Zhang, second in command of the People's Liberation Army, behind only Xi himself, purged and accused of corruption. Along with the PLA's top operational commander, Liu Zhenli, Zhang and his boss share an elite upbringing. Two sons of communist revolutionaries, making this purge. Chinese state media accuses Zhang and Liu of undermining Xi's ultimate authority over the military. China's most powerful leader since Mao Zedong, likely seeking an unprecedented fourth term next year, turning on lifelong allies and hand-picked protégés.
This really demonstrates nobody in that system is safe, truly.
Former CIA officer Jonathan Sin spent years analyzing China's military.
Getting rid of somebody he's known for so long and talking about him violating the chairman responsibility system does make me wonder, is he starting to veer more into kind of a paranoid or dictator mode?
The lack of clear answers is fueling intense online speculation. Inside China, government censors only allow comments supporting the investigation. Outside China, unverified rumors of a shootout between security teams loyal to Zhang and Xi. There's no evidence those claims are real.
I think this is more reflective of the information vacuum inside the system.
Zhang now joins a long list, more than 20 senior military leaders removed since 2022.
She has somehow concluded that the rot is so deep in the PLA and the mismanagement is so gross at the top that he needs to clean house with an entire generation of leaders.
What happens to people when they're purged?
They come out, they look gray, they look gaunt, they look haggard. It's pretty rough.
Imprisonment is common. Execution still legally possible. In Xi Jinping's China, power offers no protection from the chairman's purge. Will Ripley, CNN, Taipei.
All right, teens and screens. Any parent knows they are certainly often inseparable, but is that doing more harm than good? We'll have details of a landmark trial next.
These little creatures love to relax, but they are also very hard workers. This year, a family of beavers helped restore a wetland ecosystem in the Czech Republic, doing what humans had planned and saving over $1 million. No concrete, no cost, just nature doing its thing. Be part of the movement. Find out more on cnn.com/call to earth, in partnership with Rolex and its Perpetual Planet Initiative.
So this is rapidly becoming a very chaotic scene now. A lot of people are now fighting to put food on the table. She wants to invite us in to see how she's living.
2 months ago, this camp didn't even exist.
They will not stay there. We, Jews, will be in Gaza.
That sounds like ethnic cleansing. Can you see how deep that is?
He kept screaming, Dad, Dad.
What is the next step now? How do you start a new life?
The FI Institute was created 6 years ago as a not-for-profit foundation. We host global conversation to see if all these challenges that the global economy is facing could come with solutions. Asia today is definitely a center of gravity of what is happening in terms of innovation, in terms of global investment, and in terms of opportunities. So we see Europe being extremely slow these past few years. Latin America is facing a lot of challenges, while Asia is a land of opportunity. And we see a lot of young entrepreneurs who are even moving to Asia to be part of this evolution.
Here's a breakdown of what you can find out front.
The real question comes down to, where is the supreme leader?
Where are we when it comes to inflation? Direct, in-depth, and raw.
Do you think that Pam Bondi is hiding something?
Hell yeah, I think she's hiding something.
Getting ahead of the biggest stories and giving you context you won't find anywhere else.
We are in an unprecedented moment. Do you like capitalism?
No, I have many critiques of capitalism.
Aaron Burnett out front, weekdays on CNN.
All right, we have some new developments about a lawsuit against the largest social media companies. TikTok has just settled with a mother-daughter who initially filed suit against 4 social media companies, including Meta, YouTube, TikTok, and Snap. Snap settled last week, avoiding the trial over alleged dangers of social media. The mother and daughter claim the companies knowingly created addictive features that harmed the daughter's mental health. Tech companies have rejected that idea, saying their apps provide entertainment and connections to friends. Top executives from the 2 remaining companies are expected to take the stand. The outcome of this and other cases against them really could affect how these companies do business. Also, France is taking it one step further. The National Assembly has just backed legislation to ban children under 15 from using social media. Their main concerns are online bullying and mental health risks as well. One member of parliament says that tech giants are making money by preying on children.
Ces réseaux sociaux, these social networks promise to connect, but they have fragmented. They promise to inform, but they have overwhelmed. They promise to entertain, but they have confined. The conclusion is clear. Our children read less, move less, sleep less, and compare themselves more. It seems to me that we could and should unite behind a simple yet essential fight. To refuse to allow childhood to become a market and our youth to be the playground of algorithms.
The bill now moves to the Senate before a final vote in the lower house. Australia just passed a similar bill that banned kids under 16 from using social media too. All other countries are also considering bans too. Let's get some perspective on the story. Nicole Turner-Lee is the director of the Centre for Technology and Innovation and a senior fellow at the Brookings Institution. She's also written a book called Digitally Invisible, How the Internet is Creating the New Underclass. Nicole, thank you so much for being with us. Before we get to what's happening in France, I do want to start on this trial resuming in the Los Angeles Superior Court. I mean, this idea that social media companies potentially misled the public about the harm that their apps can cause, especially young people. Depending on the outcome of this particular case, just explain to us what new regulations might we end up seeing when it comes to some of these social media companies?
Well, thanks for having me. This case that has actually been brought into the Los Angeles court is going to be quite interesting. It's, I think, a response to the lack of legislation in the United States over the last few years, where we've actually had several conversations, especially when parents have come to Washington, D.C., to really ask for social media legislation. I mean, this is a trial of about 1,600 plaintiffs that are going to go up against the big tech companies, really assessing their platform design and suggesting that that design has a lot to do with teen addiction. And it's going to be interesting how this really falls out, because some of the retribution that many of the plaintiffs are asking for is financial or something related to some compensation for their harms to their children. But I'm not sure if we're going to get legislation out of this, or it's going to be at least a prompt that we need something to be done in the United States.
Explain to us about the role that Section 230 plays in all of this, because that's part of the Communications Decency Act, and essentially it protects them from internet speech, or rather it protects internet speech. So a lot of these companies are using that to sort of shield themselves from any kind of liability when it comes to the content, the actual content that is posted on their platform. How does Section 230 from the Communications Decency Act play into this?
Well, I think it's important for people to know that the tech companies do have protections in light of the fact that there's no legislation, and that protection does come from what you talked about, Section 230. They are publishers. You know, they perceive themselves as people who are publishing a modern day newspaper where they should not be subject to any harms or consequences that may come from individual users or readers. That may not be working and standing up to parents whose children are being affected by the addictions that come when it results in depression or body image challenges. So Section 230, I think, is in a fragile inflection point right now. I don't think that there's been huge appetite to completely transform that law, but it is something that is standing in the way of tech companies being on the hook for some of the consequences that many people in this lawsuit are suggesting that they've actually incurred.
And let's talk about what's happening in France right now, because the National Assembly in France has actually backed legislation to limit the use of social media from children who are under 15. So people over 15 can use it, under 15 they cannot. We saw similar legislation passed in Australia, right, that took the entire world by surprise. Theirs is for under 16s. We're seeing the UK possibly debate something very similar. So we're seeing this kind of ripple effect across the globe. Just your reaction to that, because in Australia, it turns out that one particular MP, his wife actually read Jonathan Haidt's book, The Anxious Generation, was so moved by it that she literally said to her husband, you have to do something about it. And that, as my understanding, is the genesis of what happened in Australia. Your reaction to the number of countries that are now considering similar bans?
So it's interesting, right? As we talked about, the U.S., you know, right now people are suing, and in the across the sea, people are actually finding ways to regulate. I mean, bans are going to be interesting. Australia put out a ban in December of last year. They disabled about 4 million accounts just overnight in January. A lot of people were looking, particularly kids, right, for their social media platforms. And I think Australia put out a point, you know, no more. We're going to actually cease and desist what this stuff is. But we don't know yet whether that's actually going to result in better mental health outcomes, or we're going to see a lot more engagement in just everyday activities that are not necessarily tethered to social media applications. Denmark has also followed suit. The UK, I mean, President Macron has been real clear that part of his intention for the ban is to stop American platforms and Chinese algorithms from taking advantage of young people. Again, they can be very instructive. They can come with a new set of guidance and rules that correct the course that we've been on with social media companies. But it's not clear if they're going to curb young people who really want to be on these platforms from actually making it to their destination. It's also not clear if by banning them, we're actually addressing the broader issues of just general mental health concerns and loneliness and bullying that are really inherent in our society today. So I do think as countries think about banning, they need to also be additive and figure out ways to strengthen what those programs look like, so young people have other alternatives outside of social media.
Yeah, actually, the Prime Minister of Australia, Anthony Albanese, actually said, he sort of addressed Australian teens in a video. He says, you know, start a new sport, right? Learn a new instrument, go outside and play with your friends. But as you point out, it's not so simple. It's not as if, yes, just because you make a particular ban, it means that children aren't going to find other ways to get on the platform, perhaps using VPNs. Just explain to us what the reaction, though, from social media companies has been to a lot of these European countries and Australia essentially trying to implement some of these bans.
I mean, I think these companies have pushed as hard as they can, and they're going to continue to push to find some illegality in what's happening in these countries. I do think some of those companies have tried to adjust, you know, by putting in better age verification methods and age assurance methods so that young people are actually the ones on their platforms. And I think these companies are trying to adjust to the market to figure out ways in which they can make these social media platforms much more attentive based on the child's age. I mean, many of these bans are really for young people under a certain age, like 16, before they go to high school. But I do want to point out, I mean, much of what we're seeing is not untied to this general ban on cell phones. We as a society have just been, indoctrinated with technology. And I guess our inflection point is here to really think about what this has done to our society in terms of our connectedness, most importantly to young people. But I have to tell you, with the age of AI, we've got to be careful too, because we want technology to lead innovation, but we're also telling young people don't use it. So I think at some point we're all going to have to come to the table and figure out where does innovation fit within the broader global economy that we have.
You bring up so many good points. Nicole Turner-Lee, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your perspective. All right, still to come. For the first time in more than 50 years, Japan will find itself pandaless. Why the beloved bears have been sent home to China. Just ahead.
Today we live in an unpredictable environment and news races around the world at breakneck speed.
It's a noble profession.
Why do you keep us out?
We want to keep you safe.
We're war correspondents. My show brings you the latest news and top news makers.
Can you tell me exactly about what's happening right now?
If we don't learn from some of the things in our past, then we're due to repeat them.
We also dive below the headlines.
If we are not blinded by hate, we can teach others humanity.
What does it feel like to be slapped with a 50% tariff? That's not a negotiation, Ambassador.
Any questions?
Yeah. What were you thinking when I was trying to get the truth out of you and you were obfuscating?
Well, I thought that actually you saw the contradiction.
It's crucial we make sense of what's happening.
Why do you want your country's future to be decided by US military intervention?
And fully understand what's at stake.
If you can double down on that, amen.
Amanpour, weekdays on CNN.
Weekdays on CNN.
Tonight on 360.
The stories that matter.
This whole area is just engulfed in flames.
From a trusted voice.
We witnessed something nobody alive has ever seen before. You said that AI could wipe out half of all entry-level jobs. How soon might that happen?
A fearless eyewitness.
We just got a red alert to go down to a bomb shelter.
Every night makes sense of the world.
How do you make the case that USAID's previous mission was in the United States' national interest?
Anderson Cooper 360. Weekdays on CNN.
Visitors can not only see the old village, but also experience the local customs and culture by staying with local families. In ancient times, it was a large family clan, so the village was carefully planned and developed. Each courtyard has a semi-privacy and connection with the others.
All right, as tensions between China and Japan rise, two of China's best ambassadors are leaving a Tokyo zoo. Earlier today, crowds gathered to bid farewell to a pair of 4-year-old pandas. They're heading back to their ancestral home, marking the first time in decades that there will be no panda presence in Japan. CNN's Hanako Montgomery reports.
For the first time in half a century, Japan will be panda-less, as its last two cubs, Xiao Xiao and Lele, are leaving for China.
I'm really sad. We always said, there's a panda here, so we'll get to see it sometime. And then this happened. I wish I'd come more often.
News of the twins' departure has drawn fans from across the country, some waiting hours for a final glimpse. Though they were born in Tokyo in 2021, the cubs were always meant to return this year to their motherland, which loans the bears as goodwill ambassadors and to strengthen trade ties. But as tensions between Japan and China deepen, prospects for another panda loan seem increasingly far-fetched.
It feels like such a cute, innocent animal is being used as a trump card or weapon.
Relations between the two countries are at their lowest point in years, after Japan's Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi said in Parliament that a Chinese invasion of Taiwan could trigger a Japanese military response. China, which claims Taiwan as its own, considers the issue a red line. and has responded with a flurry of economic pressure tactics, like cutting flights, warning citizens against traveling to Japan, and suspending seafood imports. Now the panda's departure, though pre-planned, feels like yet another blow.
Honestly, at the operational level, we don't know if we'll get more pandas, but we hope to continue working with China on conservation and breeding research in the future.
Japan first welcomed pandas in 1972 to mark the normalization of ties with China, followed by decades of panda fever, with its surrounding by tourism and panda-themed merchandise. Tens of millions of dollars are generated each year from the panda economy, according to one economist's estimates. But with no new bear loan in sight, Japan's 50-year chapter of panda diplomacy comes to a close. Hanako Montgomery, CNN, Tokyo.
Right, finally, this hour, demand for BTS concert tickets is so high in Mexico. The President Golodryna is asking South Korea's president to help arrange more shows for the K-pop group. He says about 1 million people in Mexico want to buy the tickets for the group to come back full, but only 150,000 are available. BTS is releasing a new album in March, their first in nearly 4 years, and their world tour will begin the following month. Right, stay with CNN. There is much more One World with me and my colleague Bianna Golodryna after a short break.
Global heritage will unite us. We share early values and honor our world's most cherished legacies. To pass our heritage on to future generations. Busan invites you. The 40th session of UNESCO's World Heritage Committee. July 2026. Busan, Korea.
Join me, Larry, as I introduce you to Africa's trendsetters. See how they use their talent, resources, and passion to make a difference on the continent. This is African Voices Makers
In association with Club.
In a divided
Where do I fit? Tell me, ask your partner.
Abby Phillips brings all sides to the table.
Can you name one thing you do?
The hypocrisy is so rank, folks at home. Classes in session.
To talk about the issues.
Congresswoman, it is false. The answer is zero.
The policies.
What is the Democratic Party about? Can you answer that question?
And the biggest debates to wrap up your day.
I hear what you're saying Trump believes in, but do you think it's a good idea?
News Night with Abby Phillip, Tuesday through Saturday on CNN. Mauritius. The pristine waters and luscious green mountains are what some imagine to be a traveler's dream. But like many parts of the world, the global pandemic suspended the arrival of tourists and shut the doors of schools.
I see Edna. Hi, Edna.
Aside from his upcoming project, refurbishing old laptops for students, Francois Marc and his edutech startup, AfriEDX, has been helping the primary school Safe and Sound Academy go digital, so it could continue teaching students despite the COVID restrictions.
It's different, it's new for everybody. We took time to get used to the screen, but everything was taken on board to really ensure that education and learning was taking place in a nice and warm environment and safe for everybody.
Connect you with stories from around the globe. We're on the ground to follow the facts.
We examine big ideas, we let diverse perspectives flow and ignite conversations that matter most to bring the world to you. Stay informed, stay connected, stay invested. From our studios in Abu Dhabi, join me for Connect the World with Becky Anderson.
Weekdays on CNN.
Every day we take a step back to look at the big picture. From decisions made in Washington to the ripple effects across Asia, Europe, and beyond. We follow the story as it unfolds and hear every voice to make sure the information is clear, fair, and relevant to you. In a world packed with noise, facts matter. That's what we do here. This is The Brief.
I'm Rafael Romo in Atlanta. This is CNN.
A change of the guard in Minneapolis. Donald Trump is switching up his personnel, but the administration says there are no plans to change posture.
The second hour of One World starts right now.
The White House and Trump administration officials are very clearly trying to figure out how to move forward here. They recognize the optics are not.
Signs of retreat. The White House tries to contain the backlash as Minnesotans demand and change.
Also ahead, inside Iran, a brand new CNN report on Tehran's message for the West, and later.
Hold on, hold on.
Healing through music, how Minnesota is leaving room for inspiration even when times are dark.
All right, coming to you live from New York, I'm Zain.
And I'm Bianna Golodryna. You are watching the second hour of One World. And we're seeing what could be signs of de-escalation from the White House following the second shooting death of a U.S. citizen in Minneapolis by federal agents.
Now, President Trump says he's sending his border czar Tom Homan to Minnesota as his administration grapples with how exactly to handle Alex Pretty's death following a nationwide outpouring of both grief and rage. Homan is expected to replace Border Patrol Commander Gregory Bovino. Meantime, in a radio interview a short time ago, Trump signaled a shift in tone when describing his talks with two Minnesota leaders on Monday. But he also had this to say.
Actually, they were both great conversations, so let's hope that turns out to be so.
So is there a possibility, President Trump, of some type of compromise? I read that some of the Guard will be leaving the state of Minnesota, some type of compromise to, I guess, make those guys feel like they're in charge, even though, God help us.
Yeah, well, I think so. Yeah, I mean, I think so. What we need is their criminals. You know, they have criminals, and all I said, just give us your criminals. And if you give us the criminals, it all goes away.
When the people hit the streets! When the people hit the streets! Funding ICE is always wrong! Funding ICE is always wrong! We do!
Protesters, meanwhile, are braving sub-zero temperatures and taking to the streets of Minneapolis by the thousands, demanding accountability and more action from their representatives.
Yeah, this group outside the office of Minnesota Senator Amy Klobuchar calling on her and other lawmakers to oppose legislation that would increase funding for ICE. And their urgent messages are making it clear words and social media posts aren't enough. It's time to actually do something.
As ICE continues its reign of terror in our community, it has been outrageous to see the lack of action that has come from our leaders. We have lost friends, mothers, fathers, students, nurses, beloved members of our community, and this has not been enough for them to show up, not with their words, but with their actions.
CNN's Josh Campbell joins us live now from Los Angeles. So, Josh, when you think about the sort of changes that we're seeing on the ground, Tom Homan being rushed into Minneapolis, Gregory Bovino essentially being ousted, demoted, moved back to his previous post, what does that actually change in terms of how ordinary people in Minneapolis rather, experience ISIS presence in their streets? What changes on the ground?
It's a great question. I think it's still yet to be determined, because what we do know right now is that the White House is in a messaging crisis over this. And this is something that some wrath they're facing, both not only from the left, but also from Republicans over this latest killing of Alex Preddy there on the ground by Customs and Border Patrol officers. Of course, we've seen these protests that have occurred for several weeks based on, some of the tactics of these officers, this kind of heavy-handedness that you see as they're going about trying to fulfill Trump's immigration surge to remove people from this country that are not here lawfully. But the way they're going about it has showed up on so many of these viral social media videos. Of course, the latest culminating in this death that was caught by multiple angles. And I say a messaging crisis because what we're learning more and more is that it seems nothing that the White House said about this incident when it originally happened is actually panning out. You'll recall that Alex Preddy, they described him as a domestic terrorist, someone who was brandishing a weapon, who was trying to, in their words, massacre law enforcement officers. If that's all you hear, that obviously paints a picture. Again, none of that has actually borne out in what we're seeing there. And so people on the ground are furious. They want to see these agents out of their city. Of course, one thing that I'm waiting to see is whether the words we're now seeing, kind of the softening tone, it appears from the White House. Well, maybe we'll have more conversations with local leaders. We'll send in Tom Homan, who is less of a firebrand than the man who was running the operation before. If that actually leads to the tactics changing on the ground, we do continue to see the White House blasting local officials there, and so it's almost like you're getting two different messages, trying to kind of reduce the temperatures there, but they also are going out of their way from the White House to actually continue to criticize Democrats and blast them over these immigration policies.
Josh Campbell, live for us there. Thank you so much.
You bet. Thanks.
Well, emotional moment unfolding today in Tel Aviv's Hostage Square. A clock that was counting down the days since the first hostages were taken captive has now stopped after 843 heartbreaking days. This ceremony marks the end of a very dark chapter, now that there are no remaining Israeli hostages in Gaza.
On Monday, the Israeli military said that it had recovered the remains of Ran Givali, a police officer who was killed in the October 7th attacks, and his body then taken to Gaza.
The return of Gvili's remains now paves the way for the second phase of the Gaza peace plan and the potential reopening of the Rafah crossing between Gaza and Egypt. Aid trucks are at the border ready to roll once Israel allows them in.
Yeah, this is Gaza's main gateway to the outside world. Before the weekend, the Palestinian official slated to lead a governing committee of technocrats said he expected the crossing to open this week. The next phase of the plan for Gaza is meant to focus on reconstruction and demilitarization.
We're joined now by Stephen Cook in Washington. He is a senior fellow for Middle Eastern Studies at the Council on Foreign Relations. Stephen, it's good to see you. You and many others have said now that phase two is upon us. This may be the hardest part yet of the ceasefire plan. The focus, and as Zain noted in the introduction, would be for reconstruction. But we heard from Prime Minister Netanyahu yesterday, speaking before the Knesset, saying the focus from Israel's perspective is not on reconstruction, but the disarmament of Hamas and making sure that they are no longer in power. So is there a conflict here between how the Israelis are moving forward with how they envision phase two unfolding and the United States?
Indeed, there is. This phase is focused on, as you said, demilitarization, longer-term security, reconstruction, and the provision of basic services to Gazans. And right now, Hamas says and continues to say and has said all along, it will not disarm. If the Israelis are going to focus on that issue, which is their right, then we're going to have a problem. The United States has a different view of it. It believes that as phase two gets underway, basic services are restored, reconstruction gets underway. This will undercut Hamas's argument for maintaining its arms. I think that that's a gamble. As long as Hamas retains its arms, it has the ability to intimidate Gazans and intimidate this technocratic committee that is supposed to oversee the return of basic services and the beginning of reconstruction.
And just talk to us about how phase 2 of this deal sort of interacts with Israel's internal political pressures, Israel's sort of coalition dynamics. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, this is an election year in Israel. Either the government will fall in March over its inability, the Knesset's inability to pass a budget, we'll see, or there will be elections when the government's term runs out in October. But clearly, Prime Minister Netanyahu's coalition partners all along are insisting that Hamas is disarmed and that Hamas have no role. They've gone further. They would like the annexation of the Gaza, at the very least. They insist that and
The days to come, what are the U.S.'s options? Here, as the death toll and the at least verified death toll
after the regime itself, and prevent its ability to retaliate against U.S. partners like Israel, but also the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, and others in the region.
Yeah, the president says that perhaps talks are in the works between the Iranians and the U.S., but I feel like that was the language that we heard in leading up to the previous strike last summer, targeting their nuclear facilities.
That's exactly
very
right.
tense situation now in the region. Stephen Cook, thank you so much.
Thank you, Stephen. All right, Iran may be trying to negotiate a deal with Washington amid a growing U.S. military buildup in the Middle East, that's according to President Trump.
Yeah, in an interview with Axios on Monday, the president said that the situation is in flux, but thinks Tehran genuinely wants to cut a deal. CNN's Fred Pleitgen is in Tehran and has this report on what Iranians are saying.
Iran's leadership is sending a very strong and defiant message to the United States and specifically, of course, to the Trump administration. You could see it here on this gigantic poster on Revolution Square in central Tehran. The message on this massive poster is, if you sow the wind, you will reap the whirlwind. Obviously meaning if the United States attacks Iran, Iran will retaliate in a massive way, which could, of course, lead to a major military confrontation between the United States and Iran. And that's also something that's on the minds of many of the people that we've been speaking to here as well.
I'm not sure what to say. I think they're all collaborating with one another in the interest of the Iranian people.
I don't think Trump dares to attack. He's more bluffing.
President Trump weighs his options on what to do next. The U.S. has pulled together a substantial military in this region, but the Iranians also say they've replenished their stockpiles of ballistic missiles and are ready to hit back hard anytime. Now, of course, all this comes in the wake of those large protests happened here in Iran.
So
Raqqa is coming their way. For years, we were allies, says Abdel Jabbar al-Tai, and then at the last moment, the Americans go with Jolani, with ISIS. Jolani, the nom de guerre of Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara, until a decade ago, a leader of an al-Qaeda affiliate. The U.S. position is that the time has come for the Kurds to integrate into the Syrian army. Next morning at a school hosting people fleeing the fighting, we found few were buying America's prescription.
Donald Trump.
And the same goes to the UN and the Security Council, says Abu Diyar. He came with his wife, his sons, and his grandchildren, like so many, uprooted time and time again. In a country ripped apart by nearly 15 years of war, they're beyond the breaking point. Aren't we human, asked this woman. We moved from Afrin to Shahba to Aleppo to Hasake. Enough, enough, we're dying. Amidst the violence and chaos lies this desolate camp, home to more than 2,000 foreign women and children who flocked to Syria to live in the Islamic State, now guarded by Kurdish forces. Camp administrator Hakimat Ibrahim tells me the atmosphere turned menacing when the detainees heard the Kurds were under attack. They say ISIS is returning, she tells me, and when that happens, we won't leave one of you alive. One of the guards
anywhere else. My mom, my dad, my brothers all live in England.
The other, much bigger camp for ISIS women and children, El Hol, is now under Syrian government control. The U.S. is in the process of moving these 7,000 ISIS men who were in Kurdish-run prisons to more secure facilities in Iraq. On the defensive, the Kurds are preparing for battle. These young volunteers load bullets into their magazines. They, too, accuse the U.S. of betrayal. America has always pursued its interests, says this fighter, who asks we not show his face. As soon as it gets what it wants, America sells you out. That said, for them, it's time to go to the front. Ben Wiedemann, CNN, Northeastern Syria.
All right, and still to come for us on One World.
It was Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine that led once distant fears of Chinese aggression in the region into a more believable threat.
Japan is stepping up its military preparedness as it sees threats all around it growing more acute. Our Jim Shudo's report from a Japanese training camp coming up.
And two of the largest social media sites are on trial. Do they harm their youngest users? What the experts say and what might come out of this trial next.
And in a rare TV interview, the U.S. First Lady shares a behind-the-scenes look at Inauguration Day, sharing details on the Trump's relationship with the Bidens and more. We'll have more on that when we come back.
Explore Africa with CNN, where 54 nations create the fabric of this rich continent. This is really complex. Discover business.
The biggest economic trends impacting the continent.
Nobody has ever done this in Africa.
Clearly, you're seeing something here.
Nature and culture.
I love music. Like music, this is everything.
And the stories shaping Africa today.
Exported to markets around the world. The next 5 years, what excites you the most?
I think the digital economy is very, very exciting.
I have this compelling need to do something for my people, for my continent.
It's very, very important for us to tell our own story.
The energy is amazing. Feels so good to be here.
Today, we live in an unpredictable environment and news races around the world at breakneck speed.
It's a noble profession.
Why do you keep us out?
We want to keep you safe.
We're war correspondents. My show brings you the latest news and top news makers.
Can you tell me exactly about what's happening right now?
If we don't learn from some of the things in our past, then we're due to repeat them.
We also dive below the headlines.
If we are not blinded by hate, we can teach others humanity.
What does it feel like to be slapped with a 50% tariff?
That's not a negotiation, Ambassador.
Any questions?
Yeah. What were you thinking when I was trying to get the truth out of you and you were obfuscating?
Well, I thought that actually you saw the contradiction.
It's crucial we make sense of what's happening.
Why do you want your country's future to be decided by U.S. military intervention?
And fully understand what's at stake.
If you can double down on that, amen.
Amanpour, weekdays on CNN.
Here's a breakdown of what you can find out front. The real question comes down to where is the supreme leader? Where are we when it comes to inflation? Direct, in-depth, and raw. Do you think that Pam Bondi is hiding something?
Hell yeah, I think she's hiding something.
Getting ahead of the biggest stories and giving you context you won't find anywhere else. We are in an unprecedented moment. Do you like capitalism?
No, I have. Many critiques of capital. Any critiques of capital.
Here outside Los Angeles Superior Court, where jury selection has kicked off this morning in this first case against the social media platforms over these claims that social media platforms harm young users' mental health that we have been hearing for years. As you said, this 19-year-old California teen filed suit against Meta, YouTube, TikTok, and Snap, claiming that the platforms addicted her and harmed her mental health, leading to suicidal thoughts and self-harm. As you said, TikTok settled last night, Snap settled last week, so this case will really be against Google, YouTube, and Meta. And we do expect that the executives from these companies will testify during this trial, including Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg. And this is really just a huge moment for the parents and families who for years have been calling for more guardrails for these companies and more accountability. More than 1,000 families from across the country
filed similar lawsuits. And so whatever the outcome is in this KGM trial could impact how all of those cases are resolved. I spoke earlier to the plaintiff's lawyer, Mark Lanier, and he said we could also see changes to how these platforms operate if the jury finds in their favor. Take a listen to what he said.
Without a doubt, we will see changes to how these companies operate. The platforms, the features, they've got to have direct changes, or the companies would have to pay money ad infinitum. They're going to want to pay to settle the past, and they're going to want to change the way they do in the future.
Now, these platforms have denied the fact that they harm young users' mental health. They have talked about some of the features that they've rolled out to keep young users safer, including parental control tools, other youth safety features like content restrictions and take-a-break reminders. But soon it is going to be up to the jury in this courthouse to decide if they've done enough here. Zain, Bianna.
Like that, Duffy, live for us there. Thank you so much.
Well, today marks a grim milestone in human history. It is the 81st anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz, the Nazi death camp during World War II. Survivors and family members gathered to remember the atrocities at the notorious Nazi concentration camp. Many there shared their stories, describing the horrors that took place at Auschwitz. At the memorial site, survivors laid flowers and wreaths where so many were murdered by German forces.
In Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky is marking the day with a somber ceremony in Kyiv. The Ukrainian president says we have a chance to prevent further tragedies if the whole world unites around one nation. Britain's Prime Minister Keir Starmer marked the day by meeting with a Holocaust survivor who warns us of rising anti-Semitism.
Having endured the Holocaust, we survivors never imagined we would witness anti-Semitism at the level it is today. Remembering the past is no longer enough. I speak to you, leaders of this country. I proudly call home, and I plead that you do what you needs to be done to tackle this hate.
More than 1 million people, mainly Jews, were killed at Auschwitz between 1940 and 1945. We'll be right back with more.
These little creatures love to relax, but they are also very hard workers. This year, a family of beavers helped restore a wetland ecosystem in the Czech Republic, doing what humans had planned and saving over $1 million. No concrete, no cost, just nature doing its thing. Be part of the movement. Find out more on cnn.com/call-to-earth in partnership with Rolex and its Perpetual Planet initiative.
We've shared the stories of Africa's brightest stars, and now we're opening up the conversation. Raw, real, and revealing. This is African Voices.
This week, UFC fighter Temba Gorimbo.
I don't talk to any of my family members anymore. None.
Not one of them?
No. I have cut all my family members off.
African Voices on CNN. In association with Glow.
Why, particularly in Gaza, why has leadership failed here?
Selfish, short-term interest.
The allegations, this is chilling, stomach-churning stuff.
Yes, it is.
What happens, Maria Corina Machado, what happens if you're arrested?
Well, we're taking one day at a time.
Do you think that Colombia could be at risk here? What would it take, Mr. President, for Serbia to acknowledge Kosovo's independence? And it is here, on these grounds, St. Peter's Square, that his funeral will be held. This is what 18 months of war has done for the children of Gaza. Where do you find empathy with some of these autocrats? The genocide in Rwanda made you almost quit photography. Tell us about that moment. How does his story shape all of you who are the future?
I am Iván Pérez Sarmiento in Buenos Aires, and this is CNN.
All right, as President Trump is leaving the White House, now heading to Iowa to deliver a speech on the economy, he took some questions from reporters. Let's listen in.
All of the things having to do with Syria and that area working out very, very well. So we're very happy about it. Tom Homan, as you know, is in Minnesota now. He's meeting with the governor, and he's meeting with the mayor, I think, later. And I hear that's all going very well also. I'm going to Iowa. Some of you are coming with me, but I'm going to Iowa. And what can I say? The economy is good. It's all good. Prices are coming way down. And we have a lot of very positive news. Doing a big investigation. I want to see the investigation. I'm going to be watching over it. I want a very honorable and honest investigation. I have to see it myself. Yes. No.
The president of Syria, the president of Venezuela said that he has orders from you. What do you want to say about that?
Well, I don't know exactly what's going on there, but I haven't heard that at all. No, we have a very good relationship.
What about
I'd like to see interest rates go down. Everything else is going down. We have the energy and fuel going down. We have gasoline in many states now at $1.99. Groceries are going down. We inherited a mess with very, very high prices, very, very high prices. And I will tell you, we've made a lot of progress. So we have the groceries going down. We have the energy going down. We have gasoline going down at a record clip. And that's what I want to do. We're doing well. Well, I'm looking at that whole situation. I love everybody. I love all of our people. I love his family, and it's a very sad situation. Very sad situation. remember, we had a horrible border, the worst border we've ever had. Biden, and we're doing a great job. The other thing is Tom Homan is there right now. He's with the governor and he's with the mayor, and I hear things are going very nice.
Meeting with President Budapest back in May.
We're looking at some very good things happening on Ukraine and Russia.
Mr. President,
very good things are happening on Ukraine and
on the border with Gaza, Mr. President. Where do we stand on Gaza, Mr. President?
The economy is going very well. As you know, we've got the last hostage back, the body of the hostage. And a lot of people thought that was impossible. So we got all of the hostages back, both living and dead. And I can tell you, the parents are really appreciative. What about the
Listening to President Trump touch on a number of issues. Both domestic and international, as he has taken off their
6 days later, some 600 people showed up.
We are not afraid. We are not. We will rise.
Double the numbers, double the courage.
I am not afraid. I am not afraid. I will live for liberation, 'cause I know why I was made. We've been singing that one in English and in Spanish.
No tengo miedo.
It's by a group called the Peace Poets.
This is one of the organizers of Singing Resistance. She didn't want to be identified out of concern for her safety.
Song is a vehicle for us to grieve. It's a vehicle for us to feel rage. It's a vehicle for us to strengthen ourselves. Like that song, I Am Not Afraid, that I sang. We're not singing it because we're actually not afraid. Like, we are afraid. It is terrifying what is happening. And it's a way to gather our courage.
Courage, it seems, is contagious. Last Saturday, after Alex Preddy was shot to death by Border Patrol agents, some 1,400 people came to the
something here.
Nature and culture.
I love music. Like music, this is thing.
And the stories shaping Africa today.
Exported to markets around the world. The next 5 years, what excites you the most?
I think the digital economy is very, very exciting.
I had this compelling need to do something for my people, for my continent.
It's very, very important for us to tell our own story.
The energy is amazing. Feels so good to be here.
Wow, check this out.
From rescue bots in Switzerland to animal-inspired technology in South Korea.
Okay, it's kind of out of control. That's so cute.
Tech for Good has traversed the globe to showcase the innovations
3, 2, 1, go.
and the next-gen innovators making our world a better place. We're always on the hunt for the next breakthrough.
Time is the critical part of saving lives.
And that's why we want to hear from you.
Let's give it a try?
Yes.
Yes.
Do you have a Tech for Good? Scan the QR code and join the Tech for Good community today.
African Voices, in association with Glow Unlimited.
When I lost my last fight, online the most people that were crucifying me were Zimbabweans.
Your own people, the harshest of
and
you.
my cousins and my family members were celebrating. Celebrating my loss. So that changes a man, especially on the lowest times of your career. Like that was low.
Yeah.
And when you lose like that, and then you have that, it can only change you for the better. I used to think Zimbabweans love me.
Now you don't think that?
No. It's a sad reality. Because you want to lift the flag so high for the country.
Do you ever look back and feel like you now hold the dreams of Zimbabwe, the dreams of many other African kids?
I don't belong to a certain country because I want to be free. When I'm free, I'm happy. When I'm happy, I'm dangerous, and that's what's important to me. I hope people and kids and everyone around the world can take inspiration from myself, but it's not something that I live for. I just share my story in my honest way as it is. I'm not a good person, I'm not a bad person, I'm Temba.
Some Zimbabweans will be pissed when you say you don't belong to Zimbabwe because they own you and you represent so much for so many people who have dreams and who are inspired by you.
Nobody in Zimbabwe supported me, including my own family. They didn't support me. I had this dream by myself. I went after this by myself. People laughed at me when I was doing this. They say, which means like you're doing something that, leads you to poverty. You're from Africa. When you do something out of the norm, you know how it is. People call it's education, or you work and you provide. Of course, I have friends from Zimbabwe and I love them. My friends, I love them. And those people support me, my friends. But when you say Zimbabwe, then you're meaning the whole country now.
The black
Me
tax.
too.
The black tax that we have to...
Black tax. It paid off. So far, I've built like 4 or 5 boreholes in my village, and even in high school. And I've done so many things. I'm still doing so many things, but I didn't do it for anything, but just to feel good. I pay school fees for people. I do what I want, when I want. And when my heart says I must do something, I'll do it.
You feel that Zimbabwe didn't support you when you were coming up, but you're still out here building boreholes, paying school fees, still giving
I'm not
back
doing
to
it
that
for
community.
Zimbabwe. I'm doing it for myself. I'm doing it for my heart. I'm doing it for me when I go to heaven. I hope so.
Next, I enter the cage with Temba.
Let me talk you. So this one, look here.
Hi, baby girl. Hello. I know. I've missed you.
Why text when you can talk? With Glow Talk Master 646, you get all the time you need to catch up with friends and loved ones. Free with Glow Talk Master. Talk for 6 minutes and get 6 minutes free. Plus 50 MB data. Simply dial star 606 hash. New Glow subscribers also enjoy an extra 2,000 Naira data and airtime welcome bonus. That's right. Every time you make up to 6 minutes of calls in a day, you get 6 free minutes plus 50 MB data. Simply dial star 606 hash now to enjoy Glow Talk Master. That's right, 50 MB free data to connect and share as you please.
And right here you make a prayer.
The final prayer.
There you go.
He's a showman, this man. What are your techniques when you go into a fight? Do you plan it all in advance, or do you adapt it based on?
I'm scared
on your opponent.
but I might choke you today. let me choke you today. So this one, look here.
He was not playing.
So that is called anaconda. That's how I lost my last fight, by the way.
Oh, I like that you can make a joke about how you lost your last fight.
Yeah, that's how I lost my last fight.
Lie on the floor, back and front.
Yeah, I like that. Right. So here, this one. So the reverse of the anaconda is a gesture. Here and here. And this one, look, I connect here and I just look up.
I can't get out of it.
Yeah, you go to sleep. For me to be to the level that I want, I have to do damage. I have to kill people.
You have to kill people if you have to. This is a violent sport, as you mentioned rightly, and this is, you can see the traces of blood here all around. I think the most dramatic is probably over here. You know what? It's been a few minutes since I was in that chokehold. I still feel out of breath. This sport is not to be played with. When you won your fight and you revealed that you had $7 in your bank account, that was mind-blowing to people, because they thought, well, you're a long way from gardener and security guards.
I was coughing with flu on the day of the fight, and I bought medicine. I checked my balance, $7.49, and I took a screenshot of that $7.49, and I took it in a way of like, I'm gonna win, and when I win, I'm gonna get a bonus. performance bonus, and that's extra $50,000. So I wanted to say, when they post my picture of me with the bonus, I'll post another picture with the $7.49. How good does it feel that I was this broke and now I'm here? I didn't get the bonus on the night, but I won the fight and I was grateful. And when I posted the $7.49, I did not have $7.49 anymore because my money was coming on Monday. I was getting paid. I was happy, but I posted it as a way of just like, you know what, you can be down and out, but if you stay positive, you can become anything and you can go up. And I did that just as a way to inspire people.
You revealed you had $7 in your account before a fight, and The Rock said, "You're getting a house."
That's God. You cannot, bro. Like, my life is a movie, I believe, that is pre-written by God. I just happen to be the main actor in it. I'm blessed enough that The Rock picked me up from helping me and all things that he does for me. And behind the scenes, he does me a lot. And it does not have to be in public eye whatsoever. I don't have to say it. He does not say things like this. But, The Rock helps me a lot. And that helped me with my the global attention.
In their voice. All the news, all on Laura Coates Live, Tuesday through Saturday on CNN.
Caitlin Collins is your DC source, bringing you unprecedented access to the White House.